This is Thought in Motion, a series dedicated to the seminars of psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan. Today's video covers Lecture 1 of Seminar 5. So you might have noticed a little hiatus that I've been on from the Lacan videos. Well, I'm now returning to them to begin a more in-depth exploration of Seminar 5. The previous 3 videos of this series spent a good deal of time summarizing the graph of desire as it is presented in this seminar. I did that mostly as a standalone set of videos, but also to set the stage for a more in-depth consideration of the text. My aim in these videos will be to offer a more granular consideration for those reading along in the seminar. Lecture 1 is organized into 3 parts. First, Lacan summarizes the main points of his previous seminars. Second, he introduces an initial version of the graph that will figure centrally in the seminar. Third, he introduces the topic of Witticisms. The central theme of Seminar 5 is found in its title, Formations of the Unconscious. By this, Lacan is specifically referring to the function of the signifier in the unconscious. It is the function of the signifier that organizes his brief summary of the previous 4 seminars. Seminar 1 introduces the symbolic as the ordered system of signifiers that serves as the fundamental reality of the Freudian experience. The symbolic first makes its appearance in the life of the subject by intruding within the gap of the human being, a gap that is present due to the prematurity of birth and the original biological presence of death in the human animal. The ego, in its synthesizing function, is itself a signifier functioning within the symbolic. Seminar 2 introduces the notion of repetitive insistence as a kind of consistency of the chain of signifiers. This consistency obtains its own rules or syntax that are amenable to linguistic analysis, which he illustrated through his study of the Purloined Letter. Seminar 3 considers what happens when there is a deficiency of a fundamental signifier, one that was to lay the groundwork for providing other signifiers with their rules and syntax. If the signifier is what structures the real and has a kind of stabilizing function that regulates imaginary relations, the lack of this anchor results in an infusion of the real to fill in the deficit left by this missing signifier, and it ends up reducing the position of the big other to that of the small other, making it difficult for the subject to remain within the shared symbolic space of others. Finally, Seminar 4 showed how the only object is a metonymic object, an object that replaces the always already lost object that serves as the engine for one's desire. This exchange of objects is made possible only by the fact that the absence, as the lost object, is represented by a signifier that symbolizes this absence. It is also signifiers that make possible the emergence of metaphorical meanings for an object. Next in this lecture, Lacan introduces the schema that will figure centrally throughout the seminar. Since I've already covered much of this schema, which comes to be named the graph of desire, I won't rehash all that is said here. One thing not really mentioned in my introductory videos is that the 2 lines here are conceptualized as representing the signifying chain and the individual subject's concrete discourse. Full speech is when the discourse intersects with the signifying chain, whereas empty speech, that is, everyday discourse, short-circuits the path of discourse, having it instead moved from speaking subject to little other, forming what is the imaginary relation. Finally, we're introduced to the topic of Witticisms, which is a central theme in the first section of this seminar, and which Lacan claims is the best entry point for considering the function of the signifier in the formations of the unconscious. To illustrate this point, he highlights an example provided by Freud in his work translated as Jokes and the Unconscious. The punchline of the witticism is, "He treated me in a familiar manner." The focus on the analysis is on the neologism familiar, which represents the condensation of 2 words, familiar and millionaire. Lacan shows us how the two words are first broken apart and then conjoined in such a way to form this new term. And I previously gave the case of hangry as perhaps more intuitively relatable example. What makes these humorous? Lacan states that the message takes shape as the discourse moves in two directions at once. There is the discourse to the little other, or the metonymic object, and the discourse to the big other. Each movement of the discourse contains its own signifier, one being millionaire, the other being familiar. The witticism happens when the two signifiers meet at the point of the final message, which on its return surprises the big other because it does not return the same way as it arrived. The difference is thus confirmed by the big other, and it is this confirmation that makes possible the witticism. Now, I have to admit, the implications of this analysis are not immediately clear. What does it mean for there to be a difference between the message and the code of the big other? What does it mean for the big other to notice and confirm the difference? What are the implications of this clinically? For now, I think it's helpful to keep in mind the purpose of the seminar, an examination of the formations of the unconscious through the function of the signifier. And so first, what we have in the case of a witticism is the creation of novel signifiers and meanings through the exchange of previously established signifiers. Second, we have a critical development concerning the relationship between content and form. Form here has to do with the structural relations among signifiers. Content has to do with the meanings that get tethered to those signifiers. Through the analysis of witticisms, we're shown the priority accorded to form and how changes in form is what drives content. This is important because we're often captivated by content and tend to think that content is what is the driving factor of analysis. Third, witticisms demonstrate how every exchange between two subjects always evokes a third subject that mediates the relation, this being the big other. The big other is the unspoken audience behind every exchange. Beyond that, however, in witticisms, we see how the big other, though the source of the code responsible for the formation of discourse, is itself incomplete, is lacking, which is the condition of possibility for it being surprised by a witticism, which means there is something else at work in the unconscious that can shape the message that always originates with the big other, but undergoes a transformation in its return journey back to the big other. And this element of surprise gets us at the repressed truth of the subject, who is the other pole forming the symbolic relation that is the unconscious. If you found this video helpful and it's within your means, please consider making a super thank you tip. You can find the super thank you button below. If you wish to be an ongoing supporter of this channel, you can do so on Patreon, where I offer video transcripts and unedited materials. I want to thank the following for already supporting this channel on Patreon. You can also support this work by liking and sharing this video and subscribing to my channel. And as always, thank you for watching. Until next time, be well.